They do the noise, yeah, the mess we make. Machine Blunt Kelly get caught in the fake. Facts and logic with a twist of chest. Strip it down to truth, yeah, forget the rest. Humor blows the lies right out of the park. Look beyond the shadows that set the dark. Sparks of laughter fire up the night, bringing clarity where they blur the fight. Cut through the chaos, yeah, the tangled lies. Steampunk Kelly with a set of clear eyes. Truths and jokes gonna rock this show. Step into light where the real facts glow.
Hello and welcome to the Punch Show. My cat was making noise over there. Don't know what he's going to do. Cats are always going to cat, right, Kitty? First time a cat doesn't cat, that's a sign of the apocalypse. What did the cat say when he stubbed his toe? Me, ow! That one's kind of cute though, isn't it? So, anyway, I'm gonna drop Kitty is got a lot of she's doing some multitasking today. So I'm gonna drop her off and then she's gonna be lurking in the background. I might talk to her and you guys will have no idea what I'm talking about, but that's the way it goes. So ooh, is that wrench thing there mean you're a moderator? So anyways, I mean she's a moderator in YouTube now. So anyway, wanted to talk about a few things today. Number one, I just saw the news. I got all caught up in something else. So I just heard the news that there's another arrest in this whole Epstein situation. A former or a buddy of Trump, a former ambassador. Just another layer to the Epstein case. The Epstein class. Whoa. How did you do that? How did you do the starry thing?
I'm trying to do it again.
No, didn't work.
Oh, there it is. Yay!
Fireworks.
Right? Now watch this.
About that.
Oh, it's not going to do it. Sometimes I can get it to put hearts up. Woo. See if it'll do it. Sometimes I can.
That's like an app thing you have, or is that something on the?
I think that's something on the on Mac. I think if I do this one, it might give me balloons.
Hey, there you got a thumbs up.
Oh, I got a thumbs up. We should play with this all day and figure out what we can do with it.
Is that the StreamYard that does that, or is that YouTube?
No, it's mine. Oh, that's my Mac.
Awesomeness. So, are you Epstein? No, the last time I checked.
You're not in the files, Kelly. I'm sorry. I know that according to Epstein's ex-girlfriend or Andrew's ex-girlfriend, that makes you less than and not cool because only cool people are in the Epstein files. But unfortunately, you are not in the Epstein files. I have looked. I have dug it up. You're not there. So I guess that means you're not cool according to the Epstein class.
Are not good. Like, I don't know who his PR guy is, but his PR guy should be fired. I said something last week. I can't remember. There was just like, that has to be like somebody sat down and wrote the 100 dumbest possible responses. And then the dumbest of the dumbest. And he's like, I want to go with this one. I can't remember what it was, but
I think that the Trump administration does that every day. I think that they sit there and say, what kind of moronic item can we fool the American people with today? That's just my hypothesis. So
Hurrah. I don't know how to pronounce that. I assume that's in Cyrillic.
it is Cyrillic, and it's interesting that I thought YouTube is no longer in Russia. So that's interesting.
You know who came up with the Cyrillic alphabet?
No, who did?
A guy, a saint named Cyril.
Really?
Yeah, Russia did
This
not.
is, I love this. I learn something every freaking day.
Russia didn't have
You're
a
on.
phonetic alphabet, and there was or Cyrus, I think his name was. Among
Cyrus.
them, Cyrus went there and to like preach the gospel or whatever, and they didn't have a Cyrillic they didn't have a phonetic alphabet, so he invented one so that he can translate the Bible into it.
Oh wow!
So
Kind
that's
of like what we did with the Hawaiian language too.
yeah. I didn't know that about the Hawaiian language, but anyway, pretty cool. So Caddy likes your ears.
Well, thank
I'm
you.
glad somebody complimented your ears. Usually
Thank
it's
you.
MAGA's being jerks about them. I think the ears are awesome. I think they're personal.
I like them. They light up too. And when I have them plugged in.
Happy Monday. Is that an oxymoron? Or is it Garfield would say so.
Sometimes manics, when you're in a mania, you're extra happy.
Where can I make more money off the American people, DJT?
Oh, yeah.
Question.
Oh my gosh, wait. Did you see the phone call to C-SPAN?
That's fake.
No, it's on C-SPAN.
No, you know how I know it's fake? By the so for those who haven't watched, John Barron made a call into C-SPAN in a very, very Trump-like sounding voice that was talking about,
You do know that that's a name that he's used as is to call the press, and he's called C-SPAN before.
But here's why I know it's fake. Chuck Schumer is too stupid to make soup.
No, burgers.
Huh?
It was burgers.
No, he said soup. He said Chuck Schumer can't even make soup. Anyway, that's too creative of an insult for Donald Trump.
Well, I was going to say, I thought it was burgers because he said something about, because he did make fun of him while he was grilling last year for putting cheese on raw hamburger buns or hamburger patties, which was kind of stupid.
But anyway, I did do a check with Grok on that, and apparently there was no calls coming from the White House to C-SPAN. So anyway, whatever that's worth. She's right. They came up with the new storylines to distract the American public from all their failings, which is why I do what I do to get us back on track. Today so happy Monday. This guy is the happiest person on a Monday, but that's all right. You're allowed to be happy on Mondays. Today I'm going to talk about a couple of things. Want to talk a little bit about polling. I got your email in time today, Kitty. And the first thing that was the first article link you had in there was about polling. I wanted to talk about polling and some thoughts I had on polling. Then I want to talk about, since we were out a few days last week. Well, I was out. I was sick. I wanted to talk about some things that I wasn't able to talk about last week. I wanted to talk about the tariff ruling from the Supreme Court and how that what a lot of people are missing on that is the same principle that Alito used in striking down Biden's student loans should have been applied for this. And so Alito just totally reversed himself. Like he was just totally inconsistent, and so much so that even Gorsh called him out on it. But I wanted to talk about that and then some more about how he has tried to stylize himself as being an originalist. And this is the most anti-originalist. I mean, like the fact that the Constitution pretty explicitly, not shouldn't even say explicitly, vehemently says that the tariffs are something done by the Congress and not the president. Like this goes against, for a guy that says he's an originalist, this is the most unoriginalist, anti-originalist thing that you could think of. And then I wanted to talk about the so-called Board of Peace, which is just a joke. It's all the kids that never got invited to the cool kids table paying Donald Trump $1 billion so they can pretend they're the cool kids table. But the other thing I want to talk about that is that he's made himself the chairman of this Board of Peace, and he wants it to be, someday he envisions it as being over the UN, and he's going to be the head of it, and he's going to be the head of it after he's no longer president. So he's like, basically, he wants to be king of the world. You know, that's what the Board of Peace is all about. And I wanted to talk about that in terms of both his personal ambitions and also in terms of Gaza, and go back and really deep dive into the history of Gaza. I don't think most people really understand why we have a situation in Gaza. And if you understand why we have a situation in Gaza, then you will understand why there is no way on God's green earth, and I don't care if you mean Allah or Yahweh or whoever, when you say God's green earth, there is no way that Gaza will ever concede to this Board of Peace. And I'll explain why. But first, I wanted to talk about the whole the polls. Oh, wow. So what do I want to talk about with the polls? So there was this poll that came out that you've seen Republicans talk a lot about the Democrats' approval ratings are in the tank, you know, and they actually, I think, have gone back up a tick or two, but the Republicans are almost as bad as the Democrats now. And the Republicans are actually, they're like a point ahead maybe of the Democrats in terms of approval rating. And so I was thinking about that and contrasting that with the fact that if you look at generic ballots, then the Democrats are ahead by like 4 or 5 points across the board. So I've been thinking about that kind of contradiction. Why are the Republicans ahead, albeit barely, in approval ratings? And I think it was like Republicans had a 33% approval rating and Democrats had a 32% approval rating. So it's not like either one is, you know, all ice creams and deliciousness right now. But Republicans are have a very slightly higher approval rating, but the Democrats have a lead in the polls. And so I was thinking, why do you think, you know, why is that? How can the Democrats be ahead in the polls if they're even less popular than the Republicans? And here's my thinking. You can tell me if you agree, Lizzie or Libby. Libby. What? Resistance Kitty. How did I get Libby out of that? Anyway. Kitty. So here's what I think. I think that there are people that disagree with the Democrats and there are people that disagree with the Republicans. And then I think there are people that disagree with both parties. And the lack of satisfaction with the Democrats is not so much just disagreeing with the Democrats. It's being upset with the Democrats for not doing enough to stop the Republicans. So when it comes time to vote, they're still going to vote for the Democrats because certainly the Republicans aren't doing anything to stop the Republicans or to stop Trump. They're just, you know, kowtowing to him. And there's some frustration that Democrats are writing strongly worded letters or making very, very earnest statements on Twitter, but they're not actually doing anything. And there's to in fairness to them, what they can do is limited because they don't have any power right now. And it would be better if they had control of the House. So I think that's what it is. I don't think that the lack of popularity with the Democrats dials into the Republicans are more popular. It's the Republicans are so crappy they've actually made both parties unpopular. Would be another way of looking at it. Like, people are blaming the Democrats for both what the Republicans are doing and for the Democrats not doing them. It's not an approval of the Republicans that they don't like the Democrats. Democrats will win the midterms. I agree. I think with a 4 or 5 point, and I think the 4 or 5 point lead in the generic ballot is actually a bit underrated when you look at what's happened in all the special elections that have been going on. Like, there was the one in the Dallas area where there was like I can't remember what the numbers exactly were, but it was a district, and it was like a 1 million person district too. It wasn't like a little tiny district. And it was like Trump won by 17%, and then the guy flipped it and he won by 13%. So it's like a 30-point flip from 2024 to 2025. And there's some stuff about, like with special elections, people are just going out there to vote for the one guy. So you're not going to get that kind of advantage in a general election. Because people aren't just going to vote for their, not even a state rep or like a representative, but a state rep. That's what this was. It's like people aren't voting for that. People aren't voting for that unless they really, really, really are motivated to. But I think that there's still some subtext there that we can take home, that the people that are voting for Democrats are a lot more motivated right now than Republicans. And we've been talking for the last several years about like motivation and enthusiasm. That's what they're always calling it, voter enthusiasm. And right now, there's just no voter enthusiasm from the Republicans. Nobody's like, I think there's a lot of people that are like, that's what I voted for. And, there's that kind of idiocy. But I think there's a lot of people that are also like, that's not what I voted for. There's a lot of Republicans that are falling into that umbrella too. They maybe want mass deportations, but they don't want to see American citizens getting gunned down in the street. They didn't realize what they were getting into when it came to the tariffs. They're seeing the impact of what they voted for, and they're like, what they really voted for was to bring down the prices of groceries. And that's not what they're getting. Now they're getting a president that just declares that prices are down and thinks that means it's true. And this is a guy that's made billions of dollars off of being the president and has never, ever, I doubt Donald Trump has ever gone grocery shopping in his life. I do not think he's ever actually gone into a grocery store, walked around, put eggs in the basket, taken the basket up to the shopping counter, and checked out. I honestly do not believe he has ever done that. Not the guy that got $600 million from his dad. There is 0% chance. I doubt he's ever even been inside a grocery store unless it was for a campaign event. So when you have, like that kind of thing going on, and then you've got like him bragging about his ballroom as though he has any balls. Um, you like that one? So there's that. There. You've got him now. He wants to build this thing to compensate for his rather small mushroom. The Trump memorial thing that he wants to build. He's trying to get airports renamed in his name, and he's trying to get naming rights for his name in case an airport becomes named after him. And so he's just like making billions of dollars off of being president. And he's selling pardons and all of this kind of stuff. And you got people that are, I just want to be able to afford to go pay for my groceries and still have enough money to pay for my health care. Like, there's a disconnect there that even I think a lot of the people that voted for him are feeling, because they voted for him thinking that the prices were all Biden's fault and Trump was going to solve it, which was all nonsense to anybody that paid attention. But I mean, in all honesty, a lot of people that voted for Trump are just too damn tired to pay attention. Like, they really didn't know why they thought Trump would. But, if you're just sitting there and you're just absorbing your news through osmosis, and you hear about, how inflation is Biden's problem, then you just kind of assimilate somehow that Biden is responsible for it. And then inflation wasn't bad under Trump. And Trump must be doing something about inflation that Biden wasn't. Trump is good for inflation. Biden's bad for inflation. Inflation is hurting me. Therefore, I'm going to vote for Trump. Without ever analyzing any of it, just post hoc ergo propter hoc. Because of this, therefore this. There's an episode on the West Wing about that. It's this logical fallacy that because this thing is true, following this thing, then this thing is true because of that thing. Anyway. That's the reason that Trump won. More than anything else is inflation. And this thought that it was somehow Biden's fault and that Trump was going to help it. And now Trump is not only not helping it, he's hurting it. He's actively hurting it. He's lying about how it's not better, or about how it's better. And he's mocking the whole thing by affordability. Now their favorite word is affordability, the way he says it. Affordability. As though, like if you say it that way, then all of a sudden the price of beef goes down. And he's lying about gas prices and all of that stuff. And this is where I think a lot of, you've got your hardcore, red hat wearing MAGAs, right? But they could tell, he could say the sky was green, and they would argue until they were blue in the face that the sky was green. But there are some that just voted for him because they thought that he was going to bring prices down. And those people are frustrated too. And that's why you see his approval ratings are in the tank. And then I think that there's some people that are seeing the humanity or the lack of humanity, the way he's doing the mass deportations. Like, they're like, okay, I'm okay with getting rid of the worst of the worst, but locking up a 5-year-old kid with a bunny hat who actually was legitimately doing it the right way, like, that doesn't make sense. So I think that, like, he's losing a lot of the voter enthusiasm. I think there might be still some people that support him, but they're not gonna, on some level, but they're not gonna come out and vote for him. I think he's lost a lot of his enthusiasm. And it's not that the Democrats have enthusiasm. but I think there is a lot of anti-Trump enthusiasm more than anything else. Like people are there are a lot of people that are pissed off at Trump. And so I can just see some things flipping. I can see Congress flipping. I can see. I think we'll really see, one thing we'll really see is how the Texas Senate race goes. I posted about this weekend that I really like both James Tallarico and Jasmine Crockett, and I think the only way that like the easiest way for the Republicans to win is for not Jasmine Crockett and James Tallarico to sort of get into a war, but to have their supporters get into a war where they start trashing each other. So I posted about that, and then of course I had a bunch of supporters on both sides trashing the other one, and I'm like, this is the opposite of what I was trying to do here. Like, I love both candidates. I think both have their own specific pathway to victory. Like, I think Jasmine Crockett could legitimately get a lot of people on the left, that group of people that I was talking about that are mad at the Democrats because they're not doing enough to stop the Republicans. Like, she can tap into that, and she can get a lot of votes from there. And I think James Tallarico is something you don't see a lot in politics, but a genuine Christian, like that does not use his Christian faith as a weapon, but uses his faith as a compass. And like one of my favorite statements he said is, imagine if we all loved our enemies, or no, imagine if all Christians loved their enemies the way Jesus said. Which, that is a heck of a quote, because it just totally rips apart the entire MAGA paradigm. And I think we talk about like Democrats trying to win over the moderate vote, but I think James Tallarico, forget about the moderate vote, or the centrist vote, or whatever that is even supposed to mean nowadays. James Tallarico could win over a good chunk of the Christian vote just by being an actual Christian. And if he can win over that vote, then that would win over Republican voters too, right? So anyway, I think he could win, and I think Crosby could win. I think either one could win. So, like a lot of the arguments I've seen have come down to electability. Well, I think they're both electable. I think that they have some slightly different, they agree on most things. They both more or less want to start over with ICE. They both are anti-ICE. They both stop Trump. Crockett is more Medicare for all, whereas Tallarico is more built on the Affordable Care Act and, make some legislation that makes pharmaceuticals easier. His is probably more doable than Medicare for all, especially with Trump as president. But I think both bring a lot to the table. I think they both have a lot to offer. So anyway, I think that they could both win if Ken Paxton wins. I think they could both beat Ken Paxton. I'll tell you what I think about Ken Paxton. Had a dog named Honey Bear. She was a sweet dog. But one day I looked and she had a digestion problem of some sort. And so I came in and she had pooped on the rug, and she was trying to eat up her poop before I could get to her. So she gulped it down. I was like, oh, that's gross. So then later on, she pooped the puke she ate. And so now there was this kind of poop puke on the floor. And then she ate that up too. So then I took her out for a walk later, and she pooped her puke poop. And that's what I think of every time I see Ken Paxton. I mean, the guy is pooped puke poop. So that I think Ken Paxton is less popular than Ted Cruz in Texas. And I mean, I know they win, but I'm just saying Ted Cruz nearly lost to a guy that wanted to grab your guns in Texas. Jeff, or what's his name? Beto O'Rourke said he was gonna take your guns away, and he still nearly beat Ted Cruz. Still came within 3 points. So Ken Paxton is almost as popular as Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz is so unpopular that he offered to take his neighbors to Tijuana in the middle of the worst blizzard in like 100 years in the state of Texas. And they turned him in. They told the press on him. Like, they didn't just say no thanks. They stabbed him in the back with it. Ted Cruz is so odious. His own beard always looks like it's trying to escape from his face. Anyway, the Second Amendment exists to remove Donald. So anyway, my point is, I think that the Democrats have a real chance to win, and what the polling is indicating, either way, whether you're looking at the Democrats having the lead in the nationwide, and if you kind of peel back the onion a little bit, the Democrats being even more unpopular than the Democrats being even more unpopular than the Republicans, not because people agree with the Republicans, but because people disagree with the Republicans so much that it upsets them that the Democrats aren't doing enough to stop the Republicans. Oh man, I'm gonna choke down a laugh there. Donald Trump did not win the election. They just found millions of votes for Kamala Harris. Roberta, laughing at you two are just yucking up that little Bubba. They used to have when I was in school, they had this gum called Hubba Bubba. Like, it's a bubble gum. Wausau, Wisconsin, they found 250,000 votes for Kamala Harris this week. So I'll have to look into that. I had not heard that. The price of beef is going down, but that's because we're bringing in. Yes. And that's actually part of the reason that he's losing popularity in Texas. Texas has a lot of beef farmers. And what happened is they're getting kind of double slammed here, because what happened is, first they had to pay more to get their beef ready to slaughter, right? Because of the tariffs, like all the feed, fertilizer for the feed, all of that kind of stuff. All that raised the price to get the cattle to slaughter. Then the second thing is mass deportations. Mass deportations both hurt, like the cattle hand industry, and it also affected the slaughterhouses. Like, I think about 33 to 40% of the slaughterhouses are undocumented workers. And so they literally had cows that they went through all the process of getting ready to slaughter, and then just missing out on that money. Like, they'd get slaughtered and the beef would just rot. Or what would happen is there wouldn't be somebody there to slaughter the cattle. And so the way they work all of this is they prime it for a certain age, so that when it's ready, it's got this perfect marbling, perfect age, all of that. And then once it goes past that age, the beef starts to lose value. And so then it just, instead of prime rib, you've got ground beef. And so that happened to a lot of them. Really, really hurt. The tariffs really hurt the Texas cattle industry. Then, because the prices were up, Trump did the Argentina thing that you're talking about with the Argentine beef. And that meant that they could undersell the Texas beef industry, because the Texas beef industry had to pay those high tariffs. So, yeah, I think that the Texas beef industry, they might not come out, they might not be inspired to come out and vote for Jasmine Crockett, but they might just sit this one out. It's really screwing American farmers. Let's go taco. No one should believe Trump. He's a liar. Man. Have you noticed, Kitty, have you noticed the lack of trolls today?
Well, we had 3 trolls that had to be eliminated.
Oh.
They didn't follow instructions and they were calling people ugly names.
Oh.
But that and I'm trying to keep up with them to remove the ugliness so you don't have to see it.
That you're doing a remarkable job.
Well, thank you.
Kudos. I swear, I saw that they are going to charge Elon possibly for his PAC sending pre-filled out ballots. Yeah, those were fake ballots. Those weren't like real ballots, but they were these pre-filled out things that looked like ballots that they weren't annotated correctly, or the Second Amendment exists to remove Donald Trump from power because Donald Trump is a tyrant that is destroying our nation. Donald Trump is undermining our rule of law. I've pointed out this irony before with Alex Preddy. Like I thought the whole reason that we had the Second Amendment was so that you could have armed resistance to tyrants when they were out of control. Trump is not able to tell the truth. If Donald Trump said the sky was blue, I would run outside to see what the hell happened to the sky. The resistance has tons. And when is the date? March 28th? We're going to have another rally. I think they're going to get bigger and bigger, especially if we're at war with Iran by then. We have to stand up now and remove Trump from power and remove all the people that are pushing his agenda from power. Viva Che. Viva Chi. I don't know what. Viva means go, right? I don't know what C and Chi is. We have the Second Amendment. That is an obligation to remove. Dog means this. Trump falls asleep in meetings. No, Trump does not fall asleep in meetings. Trump occasionally wakes up in meetings. I like both. MAGA is on its way out. MAGA is indoctrinated fascist cult. Registered Republican here. Trump is not representative of our party. We will lose the midterm because of him. So, Brian, I don't know. I think the last time I was out a bit last week with illness, but I was talking about that Trump is the real rhino. Like all the people I know that are like real honest Republicans and have been for years, they do not recognize Donald Trump as a Republican. Nothing. This whole tariff business, that is not a Republican thing. And the candidate even quoted Reagan, and Donald Trump threw a hissy fit and gave them more tariffs. Trump is not a Republican. Trump is just using Republican base because they are the easiest to manipulate through Fox News. Fox News is just 24/7 inundation of propaganda. He will be president someday. Save this message. Tallarico. He's talented. Even Obama complimented him. The Second Amendment exists to remove Donald Trump from power because Donald Trump is a tyrant that is destroying our nation. Donald Trump is undermining our rule of law. Hey, Devil Dog. You have quite the interesting criminal record. Okay. Oh, so Devil Dog is joined. I wish I would be so much happier if Tallarico and Crockett were our two senators. Maybe if they were, then we could just kind of like give Tallarico Tubbs the nickname Tubbs, and then we could call him Crockett and Tubbs. So that would be kind of cool. Tubbs Tallarico. All right. So yeah. That's such a funny thing about Elon Musk in Georgia being the one that really did the fraud. Like, isn't that just beauty? All right. So let's go on to I wanted to talk about this whole whoops, we got okay. Hey, Mouse's houses. How you doing, buddy? Good to see you. All right, so now I want to talk about fake originalism. This is I know that everybody's talked ears off about the tariff ruling. But I wanted to focus in particular on one specific aspect of it, which is that for all the talk about Biden and the student loans program and some of the rulings that Alito struck down or helped struck down and even penned the opinion for, there is a specific doctrine that is his doctrine, his own doctrine, that he contradicted in this tariff ruling. Now, the majority went a different way than Alito, but I wanted to still just single out his Thomas's and Kavanaugh's double standard. So first of all, what does the Constitution actually say about tariffs? It says that Congress shall have, and if you're not familiar with the language, you probably are, but when people talk about an originalist, they mean, what did the founding fathers actually intend? What did they actually say? And what was they use all kinds of things, like what was the thinking at the time. And with Alito, you get some weird stuff where he literally quoted some witch hunter, like an actual witch hunter, somebody that had burned women at the stake for being witches in Dobbs. Alito quoted them from like 17th century stuff, even like 100 years before the Constitution was written, to justify Dobbs. He wrote that in the opinion on Dobbs. And this is what he called the major question doctrine. So what did the tariffs have to do? What did the founding fathers think about tariffs? What did the Constitution say about tariffs? Is the Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises. So tariffs are duties. I mean, that's what they are. It literally says the Congress has the power to set what tariffs are. Tariffs are literally named in the Constitution. This is not inference, it's the plain text. That word duties is synonymous with tariffs. The founders placed this power in Article 1, Congress, not Article 2, the executive. So Congress, duties. It's as simple as that. And that's as far as it should have gotten. I don't even know why the Supreme Court ever even heard this case. It doesn't even merit consideration. It is so obvious that you don't even need to have, like, you could if you just read the Constitution, you would know. You don't need to be a lawyer. But there's this rule that Alito and Thomas together created to stop Biden. And this is called the major question doctrine. When an executive action has vast economic and political significance, Congress must have clearly and explicitly authorized it. That's what they said. That's what they used to strike down West Virginia versus the EPA. They said the EPA couldn't regulate carbon emissions at scale under the Clean Air Act because it was too big a decision without explicit congressional authorization. So is that bigger than placing tariffs on the entire world? No. Biden versus Nebraska, student loan cancellation. They blocked like $400 to $500 billion in student loan cancellations, which a whole lot of that gets misrepresented. But we're not going to talk about that right now. We're just talking about the fact that they struck it down based on this major question doctrine. That's a lot of money, and in order to forgive that much debt, Congress has to approve it. That's what the Supreme Court said. That is the major question doctrine. This is what Thomas and Alito said. So the principle is decisions of enormous economic consequence require Congress to speak clearly. Vague or implied authority is not enough. Okay, so what Trump did is he invoked the IEEPA, which was a 1977 statute designed for national security emergencies. And this was actually written to limit, not give the president more power when it came to tariffs, but to limit the president's power when it came to tariffs. So Trump declared a national emergency over trade deficits. One of these national emergencies apparently was the president of Switzerland speaking to him with a haughty tone. He didn't like the tone of her voice, so he gave them a 39% tariff. That is a national emergency. Being mean to Donald Trump is a national emergency. He imposed tariffs on virtually every nation on Earth, including those populated entirely by penguins. The largest tariff regime since 1943, affecting trillions in trade. And there was no explicit congressional authorization for this specific use. So this IEEPA doesn't even discuss tariffs. The Constitution specifically says it is Congress's job to set tariffs. So this is like a non-starter. And in the major question doctrine, where the Congress has to explicitly give him that authority, there is no way that you can look at the IEEPA and say that Congress gave the president that authority. And you could make a better argument that Biden was not overreaching, but because at least the thing he did was like the statute stuff talked about student loans. It was about student loans. The IEEPA had nothing to do with tariffs. And it involved more money than the student loans. And so this is, how can you be saying that the student loans decision, in the student loans decision, you're saying that this is the president going too far, but in IEE and in the tariff suit, you're like, no, he has that authority. Like Alito is the fakest originalist in the history of fake originalists. Alito wrote the major questions opinion. He voted to kill student loan forgiveness. He voted to kill the EPA carbon rules. He cited a 17th century witch hunter in Dobbs. Like, that's how committed he was to, this originalist stuff when it comes to something he wanted. Clarence Thomas, he claims to follow text and history only. He voted to kill the student loan forgiveness. He voted to kill the EPA carbon rules. Article 1 explicitly gives Congress tariffs power, but he does not care. Brett Kavanaugh has his own little hypocrisy involved here. He generally defers to executive on national security, but IEPA is a domestic economic policy. It's not really an issue of national security. You can't just say it's an issue of national security. All right. You not liking the tone of voice of the president of Switzerland doesn't really constitute a national emergency. And then the particular thing about Brett Kavanaugh was when they decided to hear the case, they said, we can, Kavanaugh said, we can just let the tariffs continue because we can always just unring that bell later. And now he's voting against it, saying, oh, well, all this money's already been spent. We can't unring that bell. Might as well just let it be. And it's like, the only reason all this money is spent is because you let it happen, Brett. Okay. And I am like not the first one that's going to jump on here and defend Gorse. But on this one, I will say, like, there are some conservatives where I may not agree with what they say. I might not agree with everything they say. But at least what they say is consistent. At least their worldview is consistent, and they stay consistent with what they say. What they do is consistent with what they say. Rand Paul is one of them. And Gorse is one of them. So Gorse, he's been for the major question doctrine, right? And he wrote the majority opinion proclaiming LGBTQ workers were under Title VII, a result conservatives hated because the text required. Gorsh is not a flaming liberal or something. He's a diehard conservative who personally probably does not agree with LGBTQ policy or LGBTQ lifestyles or whatever you want to call it. Like, he doesn't agree with them on a moral level or on a personal level, but he has to agree with them on a legal level. He had to agree with what the law said. And he did. He ruled by the law, not by his own preference, which is what Alito and Kavanaugh seem to want to do. He's ruled against Republican positions when text and history demand it, and he voted to strike down Trump's IEEPA tariffs, Article 1, what it means. And he even wrote an opinion where he basically spiked it in Alito's face, saying, read the Constitution, dude. Like, that's paraphrasing. But he made it very clear that you cannot sit there and call yourself an originalist and then vote against the, vote to support Trump's unilateral right to impose tariffs. So his methodology isn't broken. He is consistent in his core beliefs and his actions. Whether he's consistent with his core legal beliefs is what I mean. Whether his actions, whether his rulings contradict his personal beliefs is another thing. But if it comes to a choice between what the law says and what he personally believes, he will go with what the law says. If it comes to a choice between what Alito's opinion is and what the law says, Alito will go with his personal opinion. Alito and Thomas had the same tools and reached the opposite conclusion. The variable isn't the doctrine. The variable is who the doctrine would constrain. It's not if it's good enough for Biden, it's good enough for Trump. But that's not the way that they roll. Abortion. So Alito's Dobb reasoning: abortion wasn't explicitly protected at the founding, therefore it's not a constitutional right. Fourth Amendment liberty must be read through historical practice of 1868. The founders didn't protect it; it doesn't exist. Cited Sir Matthew Hale, a 17th century English judge, as authority on abortion tradition. This is the guy that literally burned witches at the stake. He was a literal witch trial person that quoted in Dobbs. So I wonder what Alito would rule if it's okay to burn witches. 17th century. Who was Matthew Hale? Oh, okay, here we go. 17th century. Oh, I've gotta look at a message here. They burned women, not witches. Okay, I'm using the word witches with quotation marks around it.
Those witches were still women.
They were.
And it's still part of the patriarchy.
Yeah,
Wow.
I'm sarcastically using it. Like I don't think they were witches at all. I think they were just women that probably wouldn't sleep with him or something.
Witches would have burned them.
So he presided over witch trials, had women executed for witchcraft. He wrote, oh, this one's a fun one. He wrote that a husband cannot rape his wife because she gave irrevocable consent at marriage. He's not an American founder. He predates the Constitution by a century. And yet he's cited by Alito to establish the historical tradition around abortion. You can make abortion illegal because 500 years ago, somebody thought abortion was bad. Somebody thought slavery was good too. What if I told you that 400 or 500 years ago, they were not the moral masters of all? Okay, so the pattern doctrine as a weapon, not principle. They selectively employ this major question doctrine, EPA carbon rules. Major questions, Congress has to speak out. And constrained the Biden EPA, student loan forgiveness, too large for implied authority, Biden administration, struck it down. IEEPA tariffs, major questions, larger than anything above. And this time it was the Trump administration. Oh, but we can allow this one. Abortion rights, historical tradition, cited 17th century witch hunter, Democratic coalition, overturned that. Article 1 tariff power, explicit constitutional text applied to the Trump administration. Who cares? That's the one. I mean, like if this were not, to me, a witch hunter said something 100 years before the Constitution was written. That means that there's like explicitly, that's the founding fathers' intent. Why didn't you quote the founding fathers on it? If they had all this feeling, why didn't they write about it? That you had to go back 100 years to find somebody, that tells me you didn't find anybody. Real originalism is, and I would also like to just point out, I don't agree with originalism. I think that originalism is stupid. I think that it's possible that we learned something in the last 250 years. That maybe not everything the founding fathers thought is irrevocably correct. Like maybe they were wrong about some things. Anyway, Justices are allowed to have moral convictions. A natural law must. So, like, if Alito were to say, "I'm allowed to have moral convictions," I honestly believe this. I'm a Catholic, and therefore I'm ruling this way. At least he'd be honest in his ruling, you know. But when he uses that and then pretends there's some sort of historical precedent or to it when he wants to overturn something and then ignores the actual words in the actual Constitution when he doesn't, that's just dishonest. And I think this is something that I apply to myself. Kitty can attest. I there are times when I don't want to say something is true, but if it's true, it's true. You gotta, I think there are sometimes where we have to look at politics and say, well, if I believe this, then I have to believe it with both Obama and Trump. If I thought that if I think that you need to get Congress's consent before you go to war, then you should get Congress's consent before you go to war. You can't say, well, it was okay when Obama did it, but not when Trump did it. Or now it's okay if Trump does it, but it wasn't okay when Obama did it. You have to be consistent. The danger when the Supreme Court, and I'm just a guy, right? When you have Supreme Court justices flip-flopping like a fish out of water, that's when it gets really scary. When Supreme Court justices use constitutional language to disguise political preferences, they don't just rule incorrectly, they corrupt the legitimacy of the institution itself. And that's why now you have a president who literally is above the law. Alito and Thomas don't have doctrine. They have a preference, and they disguise it as doctrine. The founders put tariff power in the article because they didn't just live under a king who imposed economic burdens unilaterally. And that's like another part of this is tariffs were why we fought the Revolutionary War. Like, think of the Boston Tea Party, and they were yelling, no taxes without representation. What do you think the taxes were? Do you think they were a sales tax? They were tariffs. They were protesting that. So when they wrote the duties in Article 1 of the Constitution, that's what they meant. They weren't just, saying something. So anyway, that's what I have to say about that. Got some comments here. All right, so. All right, so. Mouse. I personally think the Ditka on what he can do shouldn't have been in there. In the decision. They're trying to push originalism because it's the pre-amendment, and people like Alito believe it's the Articles of Confederacy, which it's amazing how I always find it amazing how people think that we went from the Revolution to the Constitution and just totally leapfrog over the Articles of Confederation. We did not write the Articles. We didn't write the Constitution because of the Revolution. We wrote the Constitution because of the failures of the Articles of Confederation. And one of those failures of the Articles of Confederation is it did not give the federal government the authority to set taxes. And so every state was having its own tariff rates and everything like that. And there was all this competition between states. And so that's one of the reasons that they gave Congress the authority to set tariffs. A lot of people will make an argument that South Carolina Exposition, I think it was like 1838 by John C. Calhoun. It was about, that was the first time the South started talking about secession. And the reasoning was tariffs. Like, tariffs were a big deal. And so the idea that now that one man can just set tariffs however they want, that would have been that would have just sent the founding fathers into seizures. They wanted to hear it because they're invested in the company that brought up the tariff refunds. That's interesting. It's just another grift. By the way, I have made anti-ice bracelets with whistles and an emergency number to call if you get detained by ICE. If anybody wants one, email me at realresistancekitty@gmail.com. I make them and pay for shipping. Wow. That's something. So all they have to do is go and give you their name and number, and they just get it free of charge. Awesome. I love it when people lead with their feet instead of their mouth. If I see someone who's going to protest, I can pass the info along. I'm happy to send you a bunch of them if you want to hand them out. And I will not share your contact info with anyone, even Kelly. This is how I feel about Massey and Rand Paul. Oh, about the moral consistency. Even if you disagree with it, yeah. Like, Rand Paul was mad when Obama, killed the American citizen that was a terrorist overseas. I think there's enough differences. But he was also mad when ICE was killing American citizens on the city streets. I think that I think my new future ex-husband running for the Senate in Texas has made some amazing points about Christianity. Your new future how does your present future ex-husband feel about that?
Remember, in my house, we share.
If a Democrat wins, should they expand the Supreme Court to more members? I think I've thought about this a lot. And I think there's a good argument to be made. There's 13 federal court districts. And when they raised it to 9, it was because there were 9 districts. And I think that they should pass a law to align the number of federal court districts with the number of federal court justices or Supreme Court justices, so that it's always the same. And then that way you don't get into each president comes along and names a bunch of others, because you have to expand not just the Supreme Court, but the entire court system, the entire federal court system, which not everybody's going to want to do. But I think right now the federal court system is 13 courts. So the first time you would only need to add 4 more Supreme Court justices. So that's what I would do. I don't know what that is out. Hey Skippy, how you doing today? All right, we were just talking about your buddy Rand Paul. So now the next thing I want to talk about is, I don't know where this is going to go. Could get some people mad at me, might not. I have no idea. But this is something I spent several months even diving into on a daily basis, trying to get to the heart of what is the real issue with Palestine and Gaza. And I just want to say from the outset, I think we're too busy. We get too busy trying to find the bad guy and the good guy. And I want to go through the whole history, but it's not necessarily true that it's one or the other here. Both sides have been wronged and both sides have done wrong. And both sides have been wronged by those that are not the other side. Like it's a lot more complicated. So I put together this slide deck. It's kind of lengthy. I don't know if I'll get it through it all today. And it is super, super complicated. You know what it's like? You ever put like a bunch of cords into the same basket, no matter how carefully you wrap them up? You go to pull one of them out, and there's like all this speaker wire and cables and all this kind of stuff. And it's just all somehow, while it sat there in the basket or whatever it was, all by itself, they just somehow managed to all get mixed up. So then you got to sit there and pull it out one cord at a time, unravel it, untangle it, all that kind of stuff. That's what Gaza history is like. So I'm going to go through this. And a lot of people think, okay, well, this started when a lot of people don't realize the real start date to this. The real start date to this is not 1968. It's not 1948. It's actually 1858. So why do I say that? We'll get there. But first, I want to talk about Jews in Europe versus the Ottoman Empire. Why do I want to talk about that? Because for basically my entire life, and maybe other people don't have this impression, but for some reason I always had the impression that the Jews and the Arabs had always, throughout history, through time immemorial, been at each other's throats. I thought they were being persecuted. The Jews were being persecuted in the Middle East from just going back hundreds and thousands of years. Like the Muslims and the Jews had always fought. That's not true. What is also not true is that the Jews were treated better in Europe. They were actually, the Europeans treated the Jews far worse than the Ottomans. So the ones that chased the Jews out of Jerusalem came in like 70 AD, when the Jews tried to rise up and take back Jerusalem. And the Titus, I think his name was, drove them out, completely out of Israel, basically. And so since 70 AD till relatively recently, the Jews were not a large percentage of the population in Jerusalem or in anywhere in Israel. But it wasn't the Muslims that chased them out. It was before Muslims even existed. It was the Romans that chased them out. And so they went to Europe. And in Europe, during the medieval days and all of that, there was Christian canon law banned usury or loans. Like you could not loan money for profit. And it was like against Christian law to do that. Jews were barred because, the Bible says neither a borrower nor lender be or something. So meanwhile, Jews were barred from trades, guilds, and land ownership, but they weren't banned from usury. They were the only ones that could loan money. Other Christians, Catholics couldn't loan money. And Jews could loan money. So that ended up, by default, that was the only thing Jews could do. Jews ended up being the money lenders. So that forced money lending to the Jews, monarchs. So then Jews would owe, like everybody would owe the Jews money. And this, you can draw a straight line from this to George Soros paid Democrats. The whole trope that Jews run the world, Jews finance the world, all the Jewish money spending stuff, that entire trope comes from the Middle Ages, where the Jews were forced to be the ones that lent money and then blamed for being the ones that lent money. So the monarchs would expel and what would happen is the Jews, they would start accumulating wealth. And then, there would be some war that came up or something like that. And then the monarch would suddenly decide that the Jews were bad and would chase them out. And then they would claim all the debt that was owed to the Jews. So now you didn't know the Jews that, had loaned you that money. You owned the crown that money. And this happened again and again in different countries. 1290, it happened in England. They expelled all Jews. They seized the debt portfolios in 1394 in France. They expelled all the Jews. The second time they did that. 1492, if you know your history, that something else happened then, right? So they expelled the Jews in 1492, right when Columbus sailed the ocean blue. But this whole rich Jew trope, it comes from this era. So when people are like, oh, well, why do you say I'm anti-Semitic just because I said that George Soros is paying for everything, paying for all these protesters? Well, because you don't realize it's anti-Semitic does not mean it's not anti-Semitic. That whole trope comes from them. And they wouldn't just chase them out. They chased them out with the clothes on their back if they were allowed that much. Sometimes they just killed them. So in Europe, they were forced into money lending. They were banned from trades, guild, and land. There were periodic pogroms, massacres. That's where they would just force them all to live in the same community and just go and kill them. It's not like Hitler was the first person to come up with the idea of killing Jews. Expulsions across the entire continent. Yellow star badges, kind of like we have now. It's only a matter of time before immigrants have to wear yellow star badges. Russian pogroms in the 1880s to the 1920s. That was really bad. And that kind of take note of that time frame because that's going to be relevant in a couple of minutes. There was a lot of persecution of the Jews in the second half of the 19th century and the first half of the 18th century, apart from Hitler. Then the Dreyfus Affair, French army frames a Jewish officer for treason. I won't go into that, but in the autumn, meanwhile, contrast that over the period between when Titus chased the Jews out of Jerusalem and how they lived in Europe. This is how they lived in the Ottoman Empire. There was something called the millet system. And in the millet system, the Muslims had the highest place. I'm not going to say that, it was all perfect. But Jews and Christians were allowed to live peacefully, more or less, as long as they paid their taxes, and they would kind of be self-governed. As long as, you know, like, they were peaceful and paid their taxes and didn't do a lot of stuff, like the rabbis could still be the rabbis, and there wasn't a lot of hostility against them. And every once in a while, you know, something might come up, but it was nothing like in Europe. Jews in the Ottoman Empire lived a lot better than the Jews in Europe. Jews could own property, they could practice trades, they could, you know, like, do what they wanted to do for a living. There's something called the Abbasid Golden Age, where Jewish scholars flourished. I don't know what Maimonides is. Thrived in Islamic Cairo. After 1492 Spain expulsion, Ottoman Sultan invited Jews in. So while they were being persecuted in Europe, they were being invited into the Ottoman. And there were centuries of genuine, if imperfect, tolerance. Like, it was not perfect. I'm not saying there was no persecution at all, but there was a lot less persecution. And there was a lot more acceptance. And generally speaking, as long as they paid their taxes, and as long as they didn't start anything, they just they were permitted to just exist. So then what happened now we're going to kind of fast forward to the latter half of the 19th century. Actually, did I? Okay. So during the latter half of the 19th century, the Russian pogroms intensified. Jewish intellectuals ask, is there any country that will truly accept us? Like, where can we go? I have a Jewish friend that I interviewed on this show one time. And it was right after the two Jewish people were assassinated in DC last year, if you remember that. And his question, or his statement, just really struck me. We just want to go somewhere and not be killed. Like, that's kind of not every Jew is like sitting there advocating for the bombing of Gaza, right? A lot of Jews just want a safe place to live and not be murdered, which, you know, considering their history, is a valid concern. And they actually, you know, I think I covered this later, but Israel wasn't even their first choice. They wanted to go to Argentina. So then you had 1894, the Dreyfus Affair, Jewish French army officer framed. Crowd chants, "Death to Jews." And Theodore Hesse watches. And he's the one that started talking about a Jewish homeland. And he published Der Judenstaat. Did I say that? How do I say that? Is it Judenstaat?
Der Judenstaat.
Der Judenstaat. And what does that mean? I don't know what that means. Anyway. Is it the homeland or something? Do you know? Okay, I should have looked. Apparently means like Juden. Whoops. The Jewish state, that's what it means. Okay. Got to know these things, Kelly. Hi, Brett. So he wrote this book, Der Judenstaat, and this was like the first talk about Zionism. This is where it started becoming manifest. But it was not a response to something Muslims did. It was a response to the so-called Christian persecution of the Jews in Europe that had been going on for like 2,000 years. I mean, you only have so much patience, right? Like 2,000 years is kind of a lot. So then they had a conference in Basel. Palestine selected the religious and historical connection. So that, they had this council there. But they had talked about, there was like, I think Madagascar was a place they had talked about. They talked about places in Central Africa. They talked about Argentina. It wasn't just like, let's go back to Israel. Just that is where they had their first Congress. And then from 1882 to 1903, you had your first immigration wave where 25 to 35,000 Jews arrived in Palestine. So that's really significant. I'm just going to pause there before I go on to the next section and look at some comments here. Okay. What is he talking about? I'm talking about, I think you probably caught up, but talking about Gaza. What is originalism? I see it now. Okay. If a Democrat wins, oh, wait, I'm sorry. I scrolled back up. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. File 13 and order new records. Oh, this conflict. Good luck, Kelly. Hope you're doing well. Thank you. Interesting. It's the only reason, and they certainly took advantage of. Abraham, why are you saying dummy like there's some grandiose message and justification being done? I don't know. Are you talking to me? Every day there are at least 5 major happenings that don't even make the news. I think I'm burning out from it. Is this the plan? I will say this, Brett, like, I got sick last week in the middle of the show and didn't really feel like up to coming back until today. But my brain my soul needed that reset. It's hard to like dive into this every single day and just look at the toxic crap that goes on. Side note, Burger King cheesy tots are a toxic waste. Oh, man. You want to see? Here, let me see if I can. I'll share you. Is this it? Oh, whoops, close. That's the bread I made this weekend. Does that look good? And let me see.
Are you doing your pocket?
Yeah. Can't.
So right now?
Can't find the other picture. I made this beef tips. Is that? No, that's my cake. Anyway. I wasn't planning on showing it, so I didn't have it planned. But anyway, I made some good food this weekend. I made beef tips, slow cooked beef tips over with a beef reduction over mashed potatoes and with sourdough bread. It was good. I don't eat that. I don't eat fast food anymore. I'm done with toxic food. I'm happier being skinnier. I've lost 60 pounds now. I just glanced today. They said Trump couldn't keep on topic 3 minutes, kept rambling, and then just Isn't the topic Donald Trump? Like, if the topic's Donald Trump, he can talk endlessly. He can never shut up about himself. All right, so let's go on to the next thing. So this is the next thing is, so on the one side, you had the Jews being persecuted and driven out of Europe. On the other side, in 1858, remember I told you this whole thing starts in 1858. What happened is there were actually a series of land laws that were passed in the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire, for those that don't know, had been around for like, I want to say 900 years or something. And had been around a while. And it was starting to collapse. And it was starting to go into economic, like it was starting to need money. And you had these you didn't have like a Western style deeds type thing in the Middle East. You just had people that had, like, for literally thousands of years or hundreds of years, like millennia, like just handed down their farms from father to son, from father to son, from father to son, over and over again, just through countless generations. And then the Ottomans decided, nope, you need land deeds. And so you have to come and you have to register that you own this land. And not everybody was literate. Not everybody understood what these laws were for. Not everybody trusted the Ottoman government, because this was more like, this wasn't like central Ottoman territory. You know, this was more of a satellite area. And so not everybody did it. Most of them didn't. And then what happened is you had these like Turkish oligarchs and stuff that they would register the land, even though they didn't own it. They would register the land as though they owned it. And then there was a series of laws that happened, you know. So the first one was you had to register. And then another one was, this was what happened in 1858, that you could sell it to foreigners. Before, you couldn't sell the land to foreigners. Now you can sell the land to foreigners. And so you had these Ottomans buying, registering land they didn't own and then selling it. And guess who they sold it to? They sold it to the Jews who were trying to flee Europe. So you had this thing where, imagine that you're sitting in your house one day and all of a sudden somebody just comes walking into your house. And they're like, what are you doing here? I live here. And you're like, what do you mean you live here? I live here. I inherited this from my parents, who inherited it from their parents, who inherited it from their parents. My family's been living here for the last 500, 600 years. And they're like, no, but I just bought it. You're like, how could you buy it? I didn't sell it. And then you find out that the bank just decided to sell your lease. You just sell it. I don't know why the bank would even have anything. But, the bank decided they owned it. They registered that they owned it somehow and just decided to sell it to somebody. All right. I'm just using the bank as a rhetorical device here. The point is that the person that bought the house didn't do anything wrong. And the person living in the house didn't do anything wrong. The people that sold the house that they didn't own did something wrong. The legal system that allowed that to happen did something wrong. So a lot of the blame for all of this that we don't discuss is the Ottomans for allowing this to start happening. You had a lot of the blame for this belongs on the Europeans who were driving the Jews out of Europe. And then they're starting to talk about, we want to a Jewish nation where we can be safe and not murdered. And then you have on the other side these Palestinians who had been living there and working that land for centuries that are all of a sudden being chased off it. And that is the actual problem here. Is it's not a religious war. It always gets framed as some kind of religious war. It's not about religion. Now you have some religious extremists that have come up in the last 40 years. But the genesis of the problem and the large part of the issue is not about religion. It is about Palestinians being driven off of land that they owned for centuries. And so that's their side of it. And most Americans do not even know what their side of it is. They think that it's just about from the river to the sea, or it's some sort of anti-Semitic, they want to go out and kill a bunch of Jews type thing. And there are some like Hamas, and those are terrible people. And for a lot of the Jews that are there, they just bought houses. They didn't do anything wrong. That's why I say it's too easy to just break this down into one side good, one side bad. Because a lot of the wrong that was done here, and we'll get into this even more, a lot of the wrong done with this was not done by either side. So the 1858 Ottoman Land Code, they pressured by European powers. The Ottomans passed a sweeping land reform requiring formal registration of all land. The problem, Palestinian farmers had farmed land for generations. Their tenure was real, but it didn't map to Western individual titles. Result, Palestinian farmers didn't register because they feared taxes, military conscription. Absentee landlords in Beirut and Damascus got the titles instead. When Jewish organizations began purchasing land in the 1880s and 1900s, they often brought from landlords with no moral claim to it. So 1858, you had so in 1858, I think it was like 2 or 3% of the population of Israel was Jewish, and the rest was Palestinian. To give you a perspective, not many Jews lived there before this. In 1876, you had the first constitutional registration period. In 1882, the first Aliyah, Jewish immigration begins. Aliyah was like the move to Israel. 1901, Jewish National Fund founded to buy land, which they can now buy. In 1908, you had the Young Turk Revolution, tensions increase. So now you've got this situation. You've got this rising conflict now between Palestinians and Jews, and even long before World War II, even during World War I, you had, I think that that was the first consideration of a two-state solution. The first person to raise a two-state solution was this British general. But then Britain made things even worse in World War I. Hang on. Britain made things worse in World War I. How did they do that? There we go. Why is this not working? All right, I don't know why it's not working the way I want it to. We'll just go back to, there, that's the way I want it to. Okay, so there were 3 promises that they made. The first one was called the Hussein-McMahon Correspondence. And this was a series of letters between Hussein, who was a sheikh. Is that how you say it? Is it sheikh or sheikh? There was a sheikh named Hussein and this general named McMahon. And they had these negotiations, and McMahon told Hussein, hey, if the Palestinians help us win World War I and fight off the Ottomans, we'll give you your own liberty. We'll give you your own country. And there was this sort of negotiation that went on where McMahon it looks to me like he led Hussein to believe that they would get that area. The Palestinians would get that area, but then he, he wiggled out of it. He squirmed out of it later. Then there was also in 1917, there was something called the Balfour Declaration. And the Balfour Declaration was his way of getting Jewish support. So he promised Palestine a national home for Jewish people, and that a lot of that was financial support. When he was promising Hussein Arab independence, he was asking for like flesh and blood, boots on the ground, actual fighting, blood spilled sort of support. He promised the Jews a year later the same area. He promised them a national home for the Jewish people if they financially supported them in World War I. So he's got one promise to the Palestinians and one promise to the Jews. Then, meanwhile, there's this thing called the Sykes-Picot Agreement, which was a secret deal between Britain and France to carve up the land between the two of them. Guess who got the land? It wasn't the Palestinians and it wasn't the Jews. It was the French and the English. So this is number two. This is like when I talk about both were done wrong, like both sides have done wrong. Both sides have been wrong, and not just by each other. Another thing, like I think that a lot of people don't acknowledge or recognize, is how much of this is England's fault, even predating World War II. All right. So then in January 3rd, 1919, you had Emir Faisal, the Arab kingdom of Hejaz or whatever, and Chaim Weizmann, the World Zionist Organization, signed a cooperation agreement at the Paris Peace Conference. What it said is Arabs would support Jewish immigration and development in Palestine. Jews would assist in developing an Arab state. Freedom of religion was guaranteed. Muslim holy sites under Muslim control. And Faisal's handwriting caveat in Arabic: if the Arabs are established, as I have asked in my memorandum, I shall concur in above articles. But if the slightest modification is made, I shall not be bound by a single word of this agreement. The catch: Faisal couldn't read English. T.E. Lawrence translated the document, a man who knew Britain had no intention of granting Arab independence. In the outcome, Britain and France imposed the Sykes-Picot. France expelled Faisal from Syria by force. Faisal's condition was never met. Agreement void. The first Arab-Jewish peace died before it began. So again, you had a situation where they could have resolved this whole thing before it ever became an issue. And it wasn't their fault. It wasn't the Jews' fault that it didn't happen. It wasn't the Arabs' fault it didn't happen. It was England's fault. It was this T.E. Lawrence character who deliberately mistranslated the document. So, anyway, do you see what I'm saying? Like, am I just spinning wheels here? Does anybody follow me? Like, a lot of this is not the way we think of it. And then World War II came. And that's when things got worse. The Holocaust, which I don't want to gloss over the Holocaust. And it wasn't just a German thing either, the Holocaust. In 1938, there was the Evian Conference. 32 countries meet to discuss Jewish refugees. Nearly all refused to increase quotas. Hitler calls it proof the world doesn't want Jews either. So after World War II, the world convened again, and that's why we have asylum laws now. So just so you know, like when people talk about asylum being a fundamental human right, that's what they're talking about. That's why. In 1939, there was a ship that had 937 refugees flee Germany, and they were looking for a place to go. Cuba refused, the US refused, Canada refused, they returned to Europe, and at least 250 later died in the Holocaust because nobody would accept these refugees. Nobody would accept these people that were just seeking asylum before asylum was a thing. So again, we look at the whole situation in the Middle East and you say, like my friend, we just want to go somewhere where we're not killed. Where do you think that feeling comes from? It comes from having Jews killed over and over again for thousands of years. In 1939, there was a British white paper. Britain restricts Jewish immigration to Palestine to 75,000 over 5 years, right when Jews need a way out most. It's like signing a law that you can't run for your life. The Holocaust proves definitively that the Jews needed safety, a homeland, protection from a world that had spent 1,000 years proving it would not accept them. But here is the moral accounting no one wants to do. Palestinians had nothing to do with the Holocaust. They weren't responsible. Like, it wasn't their fault. They didn't turn down Jews. They didn't turn down this ship and send them back. Not one thing. The death camps were in Poland, Austria, Germany. The firing squads were in Ukraine, Lithuania. The perpetrators were European. The collaborators were European. The institution that looked away were European, American, and Canadian. And yet Palestinians, the people whose civilization had protected Jews for centuries, were the ones asked to pay. We are being asked to pay the debt for what Europe did to the Jews. The ICC and the Genocide Convention were both created because of the Holocaust. Both. Anyway. So. I guess last YouTube. Okay. Couldn't even get on. Oh, so they're talking about last week. There was some YouTube issues. I think it was one of those. What the Shockwave or something. I think it was some sort of outage with Shockwave. When Shockwave gets hit, like all the major websites get hurt. Okay. So I need to take a quick break here. You got a minute to field things there, Patsy?
What's up?
What's up?
What's up, Buttercup?
Hey, cup of butter. That's what I am. Can you handle things for a couple minutes?
Sure. I'll go pimp out my bracelets.
There you go.
All right.
You know how you can show them on the, you know how to do, you know how to do the present, right? So
Yeah.
if you want to present them, go ahead.
I can do that. All right. So, what I have done, I do a lot of resistance work. I have made these anti-ice bracelets. I have a resistor that prints me the whistles, and somebody else who donates the beads, and then I make them and send them out. And I made 80 of them yesterday. So if you would like an anti-ice bracelet, they're all different. Some are ugly, some are pretty, some are big, some are little. But if you are an organizer and want a batch of them to hand out, or if you want one, all you have to do is contact me at realresistancekitty@gmail.com. That's realresistancekitty@gmail.com. Now, I fully expect to get all signs of death threats on top of the people who actually want whistles, but I won't share your data with anybody. I won't, not even Kelly. He knows, if somebody's reaching out to give me their name and address, it's discreet and private. So I also send stickers with them that you can do guerrilla stickering with, and it is no cost. I cover the cost of the shipping and making them, because we just want to get them out and everywhere. So I have another batch of like 80 whistles that are coming in later this week. So I want to get these out the door. So again, realresistancekitty@gmail.com. And you can have one or several. Just let me know what it is that you're needing. So the other thing that I'm going to mention is that the next No Kings big international protest is March 28th. So you can go on nokings.org and you can find out in your area if there's one that's going to be hosted near you. If not, we are still looking for volunteers to organize and also host some protests and events. The other thing we are doing is we're boycotting the State of the Union. However, I'm going to be live skeeting my commentary as he's speaking. So technically, I'm not boycotting. I'm going to shame instead. So anybody who follows me on Blue Sky, Dr. Harmony at Blue Sky, you can... it's drharmony.net at Blue Sky. That's what it was. You can follow my amusing commentary, which is a lot dirtier and a little bit more expressive than we're allowed to be here because he monetizes. I don't monetize. So that I can have my free speech. Let's see, what else? There's also a lot of trainings that are free that are going on right now that are available through the Women's March, the Equality group, and No Kings, and the Mayday folks all have various trainings from de-escalation to mutual aid to protest safety, and a lot of this, even if you've already are read up on protest safety, I still recommend retaking the coursework because we've evolved our trainings to kind of evolve with the state of affairs currently. So, and pro tip, toboggans, which are probably going to start going on sale in the next month or so, depending on when Greenland has stopped invading us with their snow, that toboggans make great resistance shields. So like if you're at a protest and you're worried that it's going to be violent in some way, they make a great shield in order to protect yourself. So that's the latest. I'm gonna give you back to the boss now.
Did I would tell you the one, how do you know that Donald Trump supports protesters?
How?
Because he paid somebody to take his ACT test. So he's a pro-tester.
That one's a groaner. That's a groaner.
That one.
That one's not gonna be a t-shirt.
but even the groaners are funny.
The groaners.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's my wife, I call them courtesy laughs.
Courtesy.
Like, I
laugh.
knew that was supposed to be a joke, but ha ha ha. All right, so let's go back to so after the Jews were done being persecuted, it was followed up. This is not I did a poll one time on Twitter, and it was actually, I can't remember what the results were, but like I think it was like close to 90% had never heard of the Nakba, where 750,000 Palestinians were just driven out of their homeland. The closest thing I can compare it to is the Trail of Tears. They were just driven out of their homes, and so this goes to put things in perspective. As I said, in 1858, the Jews accounted for about 2%. Okay. Of the population, and then it was like, I think I have some slides covering this later, but before 1948 they owned 7% of the land, and then they were given 56% of the land. 531 Palestinian villages were just destroyed. These were not people that did anything wrong. It's just this land doesn't belong to you anymore. Gives 56% of the land to the Jewish state, despite Jews owning 7% of the land and making up a third of the population. So yeah, so by 1947, Jews made up a third of the population. They had gone from 3% to 33% in like less than 100 years. Israel declares independence. Truman recognizes it within 11 minutes, and the Arab states immediately attack in 1948. And so then there was this war of independence. Palestinians flee or expelled, 531 villages demolished, refugees are never allowed to return. So I mean, some people like, oh, well, this is the Palestinians started this war. As though they did, like, what they did was somehow immoral. As though, give up this place that you have been occupying for the last 2,000 years because the rest of the world says that. I mean, what happened to the Jews in the Holocaust was terrible, but it wasn't the Palestinians who did it to them. It's how come, they didn't give the Jews a land in Europe. Notice how they gave them a land that they didn't own. So 750,000 Palestinians, like the doing wrong to the Palestinians doesn't make up for the wrong that was done to the Jews. So 750,000 Palestinians are flee or are expelled. 531 villages demolished. Refugees are never allowed to return. And then a UNGA resolution 194 in December of 1948 affirms Palestinian right to return. Israel has blocked implementation for 75 years. So that escalated things, right? We always look at it as being like this religious war. It's not a religious war. It is a war over Palestine. It's It's a war over Palestinians' right to exist as a nation. They're the ones that got kicked off their land. The pattern, kill the peacemakers. So this is what's happened. There's kind of a pattern where there has been attempts to make peace. And usually it's the people that, like the people that are promoting the peace, they're killed a lot of times by their own side. Yitzhak Rabin, Israeli prime minister, signed the Oslo Accords with Arafat, shook Arafat's hand on the White House lawn. He was shot in the back by Yigal Amir, an Israel right-wing extremist who believed that Rabin was giving away Jewish land. Anwar Sadat, he was the Egyptian president, made peace with Israel at Camp David. He was assassinated by an Egyptian Islamic extremist who considered him a traitor for recognizing Israel. So a lot of the violence is, Jew on Jew violence or Muslim or Arab on Arab violence. It's not, Arabs out there assassinating the Jewish leaders and Jews out there assassinating the Palestinian leaders. Palestinian leaders who moved toward negotiation were systemically killed, exiled, or undermined and that's not to say that it doesn't work the other way. Palestinian leaders who moved toward negotiation were systemically killed, exiled, or undermined by Israeli operations, by Hamas, or by internal Palestinian politics. The moderates didn't survive long enough to make deals. The pattern is not accidental. Extremists on both sides share a common interest in preventing peace. Peace threatens their relevance, their power, and their worldview. Never again requires naming who keeps pulling the trigger on peace. So if you're Gen X like me, you grew up with the PLO. Like you always heard about the PLO. You never hear. PLO was a terrorist organization. What became a terrorist organization. After Oslo, it was promised to state. What it delivered was managed subjugation. So the Oslo trap, a peace process without peace. In 1964, the PLO was founded. Initial focus on armed resistance and international terrorism. Whoops. The Munich Olympics. And so in 1972, the Munich Olympics massacre, 11 Israeli athletes were killed by Black September. I was 5 then, so I don't remember that, but I've, read about it since. And it was like a really, really terrible day in history. I think when we lose perspective, we can lose perspective that both sides have suffered tremendously. And right now, it's easy to just be anti-Israel because of what Bibi is doing. But that's an oversimplification. In 1988, Arafat formally recognizes Israel. PLO renounces terrorism. And that was a historic shift. There was genuine hope in 1988 that we were going to make some progress. And then in 1993, you had the Oslo Accords. This was with Bill Clinton. Arafat and Rabin shake hands. Palestinian Authority was created. And there was hope we could have peace there. And Clinton had negotiated peace with Ireland and this, and he was the great peacemaker. But The problem is Oslo deferred every hard question. Jerusalem, refugees, borders, settlements doubled during the peace process. This reminds me a lot of what is happening right now with the so-called peace board and all of that. Gaza is not on board with the peace board, people. Gaza is not on board with that. They agreed to phase 1 of the peace plan. That's all they agreed to. And Israel has violated that out the Yankster. I think want to say it's over 1,200 times they violated it since October. So like more than once a day, Israel is violating it. They've killed hundreds of people. 1,200 have been wounded. So Hamas, how the monster got made. So then you have some people, this is another rhetoric that gets tossed around a lot. Well, why don't they, why do they still have Hamas? Like they just try to make Palestine and Hamas synonymous. Well, let's look at that. So in the 1980s, Israel actually encouraged Hamas. Israeli officials allowed, because they were the alternative to the PLO. Israel encourages Hamas, or Israel officials allowed Hamas, then a charitable Islamic organization, to operate and gain strength as a counterweight to the secular nationalist PLO. The logic, a divided Palestine movement, is a weaker one. In 2006, Hamas wins Palestinian elections. These were certified free and fair by international observers, including the Carter Center. Hamas wins by a 44% plurality, largely a vote against PA corruption, the Palestinian Authority corruption, not a mandate for terrorism. The US and Israel refused to recognize the results. So in 2007, Hamas takes Gaza after the US and Israel attempt to reverse the election by blocking Fatah. Hamas takes military control of Gaza. A 16-year-old blockade begins. This blockade against Gaza is like one of the most inhumane treatments of a group of people in modern times. They regulate what goes in, they regulate what comes out, they regulate who comes in, they regulate who comes out. It's been called an open air prison for a reason, because that's effectively what it is. You can't just leave if you don't like it. When considering what happened to the Jews in trying to leave Germany in 1938 and 1939, when you compare that with that ship that was driving all over the world trying to find a place to go, that right now Hamas doesn't have the right to seek asylum themselves. Is not just Hamas, but I mean Palestinians in Gaza, Gazans and Hamas are not interchangeable words, by the way. So then on October 7th, 2023, Hamas attacks Israel. 1,200 were killed, 250 were taken hostage. Israel launches the most destructive military campaign in modern history. Israel has dropped more ordnance on Gaza, a tiny little strip of land, than has been dropped in the entire Ukraine war. The monster Israel helped create became the justification for destroying Gaza. The arsonists are now running the fire department. Okay, so why'd they vote for Hamas? This is something that I see a lot. Good night, Brett. Thanks for dropping by. So we got here? So, here a lot of people say, well, why did they vote for Hamas if they didn't want them? So Hamas in 1906 or 2006, that's the last time they had an election, was 2006. Right now, the median age in Gaza is 18. Okay. A lot of people, more than half the population, wasn't even alive in 2006. And then another half of the ones that weren't old enough to vote in 2006. And then of those who were old enough to vote, not all of them voted. And then of those who voted, not all of them voted for Hamas. And if you sit there and you break down all the numbers and the percentages, about 5 to 8% of the current population ever voted for Hamas. Meanwhile, 70,000 Gazans have been killed since 2006 who have voted. So a lot of the people that voted have been killed. But a lot of the people who have been killed never had a chance to vote. Of those who did vote for Hamas, exit polls showed the majority voted against the PA corruption, not for Hamas ideology. So, like going back to what I was talking about before, a lot of people might not be voting for Democrats, but they're going to be voting against Trump and the Republicans. Not every election is binary. So, pay attention to your protest votes. That's the moral of the story. For context, the United States has never held another election. I think that's a misstatement. The United States has never held back, never stopped an election after a terrorist attack. After 9/11, we didn't just stop democracy. Israel didn't stop democracy after the October 7th. We don't hold civilian populations responsible for governments they didn't elect and can't remove. And it's just like, if you didn't vote for Trump, are you responsible for Trump? Even though he's president of America? And if you didn't vote for Biden, does that mean that you're responsible for Biden, even though he's president of the United States of America? Well, he was. It's too easy to just say, oh, well, that's who they voted for. Yes, that's who a plurality voted for 26 years ago, or 20 years ago. The collective punishment of 2.3 million people for the acts of a government, 92 to 95% of them never voted for. It's not justice. It has a name in international law. Genocide. Today, the math of catastrophe, what the numbers say, what the Board of Peace means, and why Gaza won't capitulate. So this is why I wanted to bring this up, is this stupid, and I mean this with a capital S, stupid Board of Peace thing. So since this attack on October 7th, 75,000 Gazans have been killed. That's the most conservative accepted number. It's probably more than that. 4 to 5% of Gaza's population has been eliminated. 100,000. Some estimate it could be over 100,000. 92% of Gaza's buildings have been damaged or destroyed. The U.S. estimates $70 billion to rebuild Gaza, and $5 billion has been pledged by the Board of Peace, which Donald Trump gets to determine how to spend, while his son-in-law is out there talking about beachfront property So this is one of the, when I say there is no way Gaza ever accepts this, I want you to think about what we've been talking about this whole time. The people that did this to Palestine, that did this to the people that now reside in Gaza, who forced them all the way to the shore. Primarily three countries are most responsible. England, going back to World War I, when they made false promises. Israel, who have been pushing them out and violating the laws and not letting them come back and reclaim their own lands. And the United States, who has been funding all the stuff Israel is doing. And Trump will be the chair, Tony Blair will be the vice chair, and Netanyahu will be a member. And these are going to be the three people that have the most say in how Gaza is governed. And you know who's not on the Board of Peace? The Palestinians. They're a subordinate advisory committee with no veto. So they have no say at all in how they are governed by the three nations that have driven them off their own land, have them clinging to a sliver of it in an open air prison with no say over what they get. They even, for a long time, they were like banning spices. So why would the Gazans want this? That would be like putting Germans in charge of Israel after World War II. The 160-year pattern, every time outside powers showed up, Palestinians ended up with less. They're the ones that have just been getting pushed further and further and further into the sea. They're the ones that have been being eliminated. That's all talk, there's like the saying, from the river to the sea. But the only ones being driven from the river to the sea are the Palestinians. The rational calculation, why expect different? The three entities most responsible are administering its aftermath. And I just keep thinking, the Trail of Tears parallel. It reminds me so much of the Trail of Tears. They drove them to Oklahoma, and then they just drove them into smaller and smaller reservations. Arsonists don't get to run the fire department. The whole Board of Peace thing is a mockery. But that doesn't mean that the Jews have not suffered. For 1,000 years, culminating in the Holocaust. That was a real and legitimate suffering. And I hate the false dichotomy between either, with either Palestine or Israel. You don't have to pick a side. What we need to do is find a way that they can live side by side peacefully, like they did for 1,800 years. It is doable. It was done. A two-state solution is possible. They did it. For 1,800 years. The Ottomans did it. The empire before that, I forget what they were called. Same thing. They did it. There was a brief period where the whatchamacallit, Genghis Khan took the land, and nobody was peaceful then. But for the most part, the Jews and the Muslims lived together. peacefully since there have been Muslims. The people who protected Jews for centuries are now paying for Europe's crimes and being told they were the ancient enemies all along. It's not a religious war. But Netanyahu does not equal all the Jews. Hamas does not equal all Palestinians. Conflating them only serves those who profit from the war, like Donald Trump would like to do. So anyway, that is my take. That's my take on the whole thing. I think that the whole thing is 150, 160 years, 170 years of Palestinians being slowly, methodically, and deliberately pushed off of their land. And now Donald Trump wants to be the one that pushes them the rest of the way in. And so then that brings me to the next point, which is that Donald Trump is making himself this person who is over the board. He's going to be in charge of the board. And then the board, he said that he wants the board to someday be over the UN. He wants to be king of the world. He literally wants to rule the world. And so you've got, I wrote an article about this on machinepunkelly.com. But if you want to like really get into a dense read, it's a little dense, I'll admit. But here, I'll see if I can. I'll bring it up and drop the link. I mean, not to toot my own horn, but I think it's a darn good article. Okay. I won't read the whole thing because it's like really long. But here you go. Here, I'll show you the. It's called Trump's Board of Peace is anything but. But this is, if you look at who's on the Board of Peace, it's all the kids that could never get invited to the cool kids table. And when you look at who's not on there are, like Canada, France. This is all just based on who Trump decided is worth being on it and who's not. And also who paid $1 billion. Canada's not on there. Ukraine's not on there. France isn't there. Germany declined. UK declined. Spain declined. Norway declined. But such democratic powers as Russia and Hungary and Paraguay, all the places where they're not like authoritarian despots. I'm surprised North Korea is not on it yet. Maybe someday. So anyway, I go through the history a little bit more here. And this whole thing has nothing to do with peace. It has to do with Donald Trump gaining power illicitly. That's my opinion, and I'm sticking with it because it's right. Okay. I did not. Oh. So, let's see if we got some. It's Skippy, and it's super. Wait. Okay, man. I just had the best had the best beef on WEC of all time today. You didn't try mine. You had the second best. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, I didn't. I had I don't know if they make if you can get them other places, but they have these things called Texas short ribs, which are just really really good slow cooked. And so I cook them with I cook them with some diced onions and carrots, shredded carrots, beef broth, and some seasoning and some mushrooms, and I just cook it for like 6 hours. Then I made some mashed potatoes and just take the roast beef and or the slow cooked short ribs, and I put them over the potatoes, and then I use the juice from the crock pot, and I just make a reduction out of the sauce, and it's so good. Wish I could find the picture. If I showed you the picture, you would definitely want to eat it. I noticed too that Brett is tired saying particular day I date from 2001. And kept deleting it last week. Elon Musk can drink a baba tea from my kitty poop. Are you not a fan of Elon? Doesn't sound like you're a fan of Elon, kitty. Resistance, kitty. Keith Edwards has a video about Elon in the election. I guess they proved it. I'm going to have to look into this. Elon Musk cheated in the 2024 election. Codename Cheeto couldn't keep on topic for more than 3 minutes. Then he walked off. That's like, can you imagine, like, if this was Biden? Like, I always think of those. If this would, can you imagine if Biden gave one press conference like Donald Trump does, where he just rambles incoherently for, like half an hour and doesn't even seem to be aware he's talking? I'm just waiting for Donald Trump to fall asleep during his own speech at some point in time. And they'll just say, well, that's just because he's so exhausted from all the work he does. Yeah. It's really something when you get into, so Leslie says, well, I had no idea that's how it all went down. It's really something when you start like really looking into it, how it's not just as simple as a religious conflict or something. It's beyond an oversimplification to describe it as a religious conflict, because it's not even really, it didn't start as a religious conflict. There might be some religious conflict now, but that's not how it started. Who is Keith Edwards? I don't know who Keith Edwards is. He's a media personality. I'll have to look into it. I guess the last YouTube update killed some trolls. It is a lot more peaceful here, isn't it? Oh wait, we're back. I went back too far. I went through all this already. How did I get up there? Any more than Trump represents all of us. Yes. So the crisis on Gerald Ford this is, I think you sent me a link for this, right? So new update on the sewage apocalypse. Oh, whoops, got it. So Share this tab instead. All right. Has Pete Kegsbreath taken credit for this yet? Is this because of DEI? I bet he's going to blame it on DEI. That's kind of gross. It reminded me of the Trail of Tears when they said leaving would be a choice. Exactly. I think of it not well as the Trail of Tears all the time. The board of dictators. Maybe the board of peas. It's like a bunch of peas in one pod. Secret meeting tonight at midnight under the Brooklyn Bridge. Password is sick temper tyrannus. Well, it's not secret anymore. You went and you told everybody. All dozens of people that watch this show are now. The sundowning is upon MAGA. The signs are everywhere. He's exhausted from staying up all night surfing social media. I mean, you would be too. Like, to be fair. LMAO. All right, so we are done with the slideshows and we're caught up on the comments. And it was a fairly conflict-free show for once. Not as much entertaining antagonism, but it is definitely easier on the soul. Thank you, Kitty. So I think that will just end here since it's a good spot to end it. And thank you guys for joining. And we'll see you tomorrow. Oh, what? Mexico is in war, period. Go protect your own nation and people. To whom are you speaking, George? To whom are you speaking? What? I have no idea. Mexico is not at war. There's a conflict with the cartel there. Don't know what that has to do with. Okay, why do you think that Mexico is my own nation and people? Like, what makes you think that, George? What a weird thing to say. How many ways are your parents related, George? You look like, like your parents could be sibling cousins. Okay, I believe what I want. Because I'm a definition of a traitor. It's not my fault your parents are sibling cousins. All right, I think we can do without this kind of nonsense. Tell your aunt and mom I said hello. Okay. Bye, George. All right. So, all right. We'll talk to you guys later. Have a good evening and a pleasant tomorrow. And we'll see you tomorrow. I don't know what I'll talk about tomorrow, but I'll talk about something. Talk to you later.